I think filming yourself is an excellent tool to basically coach yourself, to watch yourself back and identify things that you need to improve on. And I do have both the Pixem and the Pivo, and hence I get a lot of messages asking, hey, what do you think of the Pixem or the Pivo? Like, which one would you recommend? Welcome to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast, a source for riding and training insights with the goal of helping your horse be a happy, light, and willing partner. I'm your host, Amalia Dempsey, a mainstream equestrian rider who discovered natural horsemanship, and now I help riders like you achieve connection and communication, so you can have more fun and fulfillment whilst prioritising partnership with your horse. Want to find out my horse training philosophy? Access the free Connection and Communication mini course at amaliadempsey.com. Now sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Welcome to episode 5 of the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Thanks so much for being here. And today I'm actually going to be talking about something not so much horsemanship related, but something that I get asked a lot because some of you may know that I use both the Pixem robot and the Pivo robot to film myself doing groundwork and riding with my horses. I think filming yourself is an excellent tool to basically coach yourself, to watch yourself back and identify things that you need to improve on. And I do have both the Pixem and the Pivo, and hence I get a lot of messages asking, hey, what do you think of the Pixem or the Pivo? Like, which one would you recommend? And honestly, there are so many things that I have to talk about that I thought I'll just record a podcast episode and just point everyone in this direction when they do ask me that question. So that way I can give you my full rundown on both of the products and you can make a decision for yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'll talk about the Pixem and the Pivo in different categories like price, the setup, the tracking distance and the accuracy, the film quality, the battery life, and then my overall recommendation. But before I do so, please make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And remember, if you leave me a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, or if you screenshot this episode and post it to your Instagram story, I'm sending everyone who does that a checklist of 10 tips to help you improve your relationship with your horse. So please go ahead and do that. And let's get stuck into this podcast. Okay, so I'll just give you a bit of a backstory. I wanted a Pixem for such a long time. Initially, I wanted the Pixio, but I realized that you needed a good video camera to use with that. And then they brought out the Pixem, which you can use with your smartphone, which is basically what I use to film myself because it's just quick and easy. And yeah, then I just absolutely was obsessed with getting one, but they were quite expensive, so I just didn't want to splurge and buy that for myself. And I was so fortunate that my lovely non-horsey husband organised with his family to purchase one for me for Christmas in 2019. So I've had a lot of experience using that Pixem now. And then more recently, a friend of mine got the Pivo. She hadn't used it yet, but I'd noticed a lot of other people using the Pivo. And I was like, oh, maybe there's something to this Pivo. Like, a lot of people are using it and it's not that expensive. So I'll just buy it and see how it goes. And if it's not as good as the Pixem, I'll just sell it. Anyway, so now I've got both, and I honestly do use both, and I want to talk to you about the different features. So let's start off with price. The Pixem at the moment is $958.80 USD, which works out to be quite a lot in Australian dollars. In Australian dollars, the Pixem is roughly $1,247. So a significant investment for something that, you know, basically just attaches to your camera and records you in real time. But a lot of us can see the value in that. And then the Pivo is, at the base model, the Pod Red is $109 USD. And what I've got is the Pod Silver, just because it's a little bit better, it's a little bit faster in terms of tracking, is $139 USD, which works out to be about 180 Australian dollars. So significantly cheaper than the Pixem. The other thing to remember with the Pixem is that you do need a really sturdy quality tripod to go along with that. And I think I spent roughly $200 on that on top of what the price of the Pixem already is. So roughly $1,247 Australian plus an extra around $200 Australian for a tripod as well. So it's almost $1,500 basically for your full setup. Whereas with Pivo, they do offer a package where you can buy the tripod with the Pivo, and that's 189 USD, which is roughly 250 Australian dollars. So for everything in the Pixem, you're looking at around 1,500. For everything you need in the Pivo, you're looking at around 250. So a significant price difference there. And if that's the primary thing that you're basing your decision on, then the Pivo is probably the one for you. The other thing to mention is that the Pivo actually doesn't need a tripod. You don't have to use a tripod. I thought I did, and I do use it. I definitely always use the tripod with the Pivo, but you could just as easily just place the Pivo on like a mounting block or, you know, a 44-gallon drum or something up high, because it's got a little platform thing that you put the phone on, whereas the Pixem, you 100% need a tripod. You just wouldn't function properly without one. So yeah, there's a couple of differences there in terms of what you actually need. In terms of the setup, now this is a huge make or break factor for me, because the Pixem, quite honestly, takes a long time to set up. I mean, initially it took me a good half an hour to get it set up, and then after a while, once I got it down to a fine art, it would take me about 10 minutes. But then if I'd go to a new location, it would then take me a long time to work out exactly how to set things up perfectly again. And the reason for that is with the Pixem, you get an additional 3 beacons, right? So they help to track where you are, and you wear a watch as well. All the beacons need to be roughly at the same height as the Pixem camera, the robot. And so that can be a little bit tricky in that some locations you can't really find 3 points that you can put beacons on at the same height. So you almost need an extra 3 tripods for them to be fully adjustable in any environment. In an arena situation, you can put the beacons on top of the arena fencing. So if you've got a fenced arena, that might make it a little bit easier. But it's still a little bit of a hassle, because you do still have to set up the beacons, go around and make sure all the beacons are turned on, make sure that the Pixem is turned on, make sure your watch is turned on and it's tracking you, and then hit record. There's a real process to go through. But once you get it set up and good to go, it's very good. So it's almost worth the time setting it up perfectly, because then you know that your tracking and filming is going to be really good. Whereas with the Pivo, it does not take long to set up at all, which is why I actually use it more frequently, because if I'm not really too fussed about the exact accuracy, I just want to quickly check something or just film 10 minutes or so, I literally just have to press the button on, make sure it's connected, and make sure it's on horse mode, and it tracks me because it identifies the shape of the horse. But in saying that, the lighting is important when it comes to the Pivo, in that it can lose you sometimes if it confuses something else as a horse. So I've filmed myself down the beach with the Pivo before, and like a pack of runners have come past and it's just locked onto them, and I've got about a few minutes of footage of runners on the beach. It's great. And also I've got some fencing that's been delivered at home at the moment. It's big and black and brown, and it sometimes confuses that as the horse as well when I ride past the fencing. So if you have darker coloured background, then it perhaps might not pick up your horse as well if you do have a dark horse. I'm not sure how it would go with a grey horse, to be honest. So yes, in terms of the setup, the Pivo is hands down much easier, much quicker, and overall much more user-friendly than the Pixem. The Pixem does take a lot longer to set up. Once you do get into the rhythm of it, it's a little bit easier because you know exactly how to set it up, but it still can be a little bit of pain and time consuming to do so. In terms of tracking distance, the Pixem says that it tracks up to 100 meters. I haven't actually officially tested that because I've only really used it in a 20 by 60 meter arena, but it never loses me. So as in, if I've got it set up perfectly, the Pixem will be locked onto me the entire time, no matter what distance I'm at from the robot. if it's not set up properly, it will lose you. So it is a little bit sensitive in that if those beacons aren't all at the right height and aren't all upright and aren't all facing the robot, then it can lose you and start to do circles and go off into space. But if you have the setup right, it's very reliable. With the Pivo, I couldn't actually find an exact tracking distance on the website, but I have used it in a 20 by 60 meter arena. It does still track me when I am a good, 50 meters away, but it's a little less reliable. So it might lose me for a little bit and then quickly there she is and zoom back to where I am. It definitely operates a lot better if you're very close to it. So not very close, if you're within 20 meters. If you're too close, it actually does lose you. So I've ridden past it too close before, and because you go past so quickly when you're very close, it kind of misses you and then it loses you for a bit. But then once you ride back past it, it picks you up again, which is great. But the tracking distance isn't as good as the Pixem. But in saying that, if you just want to film up close, like if you just want to plonk it in the middle of a 20 meter circle, it's absolutely fantastic for that. And there's a couple of videos on my Instagram. If you have a look at the ones where I'm using the plastic tarps with my horses, that's pretty much one of the first times I used the Pivo, and it was really good at just locking onto me during that time. So that was handy. The tracking accuracy and the zoom. With the Pixem, it's very accurate and you can set your zoom distance, so how far you want it to zoom in, and it will be very consistent with that. So it's very reliable. With the Pivo, you can choose to have, I'm pretty sure you can select your zoom distance as well, but you can choose to not zoom too. So a lot of people thought that there was no zoom option with the Pivo. There definitely is. It does zoom in and track you with the zoom function as well. But it's a little bit variable, so it's not hugely accurate. So that you've probably picked up by now that the Pivo is better value for money, but it's just not quite as accurate as the Pixem. But the Pixem just doesn't really have that user-friendly ability in that it's not super easy and quick to use, even though they do advertise that it's so easy to use, but I wouldn't say it's easy. In terms of the film quality, they are both pretty much the same because the film quality depends on what device you're actually using. I think the quality of the video is affected a little bit because with both of them you have to use their apps, and I think it does distort the quality slightly, but it's pretty much on par with both. So if film quality is something that you're deciding on, they're pretty much the same for both. In terms of battery life, the Pivo, I have to say, does drain the battery on your phone quite quickly. So I wouldn't be able to use it for an extended period of time, like pretty much after one session, after an hour of fiddling around with it and using it on and off, it's pretty much dead in terms of the Pivo robot and my phone as well. My iPhone, I use a 11, I think it is, iPhone 11. With the Pixem, I'd say it lasts a little bit longer, so I could probably get 2 full sessions out of the Pixem, and it doesn't drain my phone battery quite as much, which is interesting. One thing to mention with the filming with both of these devices, with the Pixem, because you're wearing the watch, the watch is actually what the robot tracks. So you could put the watch on your horse or you could put it on you. And if you were doing groundwork, the Pixem is only going to lock onto you. So if your horse is further away from you, it's not necessarily going to pick up your horse, which is what you want to see. You want to see yourself and your horse. So sometimes I'll film groundwork, and because it's locked onto me, I don't really get to see what the horse is doing. So for that, you would just need to change the zoom setting and have very little zoom so you can see the full picture, but then you won't be able to see like any fine details. And that's the same with the Pivo. So you can choose for it to lock onto a human or a horse. And if you do that, you need to make sure that you don't have any zoom function turned on, because then you're either only going to see the horse or you, not both of you in the same frame. The other thing to mention with the Pivo is when it's selected to horse, you can't really ride around in an arena with other horses because it'll just start picking up other horses. It's not going to lock onto you specifically. Whereas with the Pixem, it's only going to lock onto the watch. So if you're riding around in an arena with other horses, it will still only video you and lock onto you. So if you're in a facility where quite often there are other horses around, even horses in a paddock next door to the arena, it can lock onto sometimes. So you need to, if that's your situation, then you're probably going to get better use out of the Pixem. So in summary, Pixem versus Pivo, I do still use them both. I do think they're both fantastic products. I do have to say that I use the Pivo a hell of a lot more simply for ease of use. But if I was filming something that I needed really good accuracy for, like a dressage test for an online competition or a sales video or something like that, or if I just really wanted a better quality in terms of accuracy, a more accurate film, then I would go for the Pixem. I really hope that this episode has helped you decide in terms of what you're after in terms of a Pixem or a Pivo. Maybe you will get both like me, or maybe you've just decided on one over the other. If this episode has helped, please help me out. I actually have 2 affiliate links for these products in the description for this podcast. So if you do decide to go ahead, please use one of those links, and it just means that I get a small commission from your sale, basically. So I would really appreciate if you did do that. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, whether that's interviews, something you'd like me to review, a topic you'd like me to talk on, then please let me know. Get in touch with me at Amalia_horses on Instagram. I will catch you in the next episode. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get notified every time a new episode is released. And if you've learned even just one small thing from today's show, I would really appreciate if you could leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you have any questions from today's show, suggestions for future episodes, or just want to reach out and say hi, I would love to connect with you on Instagram at Amalia_horses. Remember to also register for my free connection and communication mini course at amaliadempsey.com.